at least 95% of children who are struggling with reading and spelling are instructional casualties. If you gave them to me, they would stop being an instructional casualty, because I would teach them in the way they learn, and so they would no longer have learning difficulties. It's a learning difficulty because of the instruction. The instruction is not helping them to learn easily. So that's what I do. I help every child to have to understand how they learn, so that I can give them what they need to learn to read and spell easily. Okay, I just want to show you something because I don't know if it'll actually happen again. Monday, I walked over 12,000 steps, which my rescue dogs were very happy about, but I was stomping it off because I didn't know what else to do with myself. So I did a lot of steps on Monday, and I kind of just wanted to do just a little video to explain my frustration and to just put something in perspective for whoever needs to hear this. At the moment, I wonder if I can put it on the screen or whatever after I've finished doing this. At least 1 in 4 children leave primary school unable to read at the expected level to be able to cope with the secondary school curriculum. 1 in 4. In anything else, if 1 in 4 fail to do something, we wouldn't be blaming the patient. Let's say it was in the medical field. We wouldn't be blaming the patient for being the 1 in 4. We wouldn't be blaming the person who's administering the jab, the medication, whatever else. We'd be looking at the drug. But nobody's looking at synthetic phonics programs in Key Stage 1. And so the children that are failing, what people are saying is, let's give them more of it. Whereas I'm saying, but that's the issue. The issue is the synthetic phonics programs. These children are instructional casualties. Let me say that again. These children are instructional casualties. They are failing because they are all being taught in the same way at the same time. And that is not what we know children need to read. Some children don't need any explicit instruction at all. I wasn't taught to read. I just read. My child got a week of something because we suddenly thought, you know what, perhaps actually he needs to read, had no interest in reading whatsoever. And can't remember how old he was now. We were in Spain. I still remember my parents were with me, and my mum, who's a teacher, said, perhaps we should actually do something about getting him reading. He had a week of something, and he could read. Some brains just need very little to be able to start self-teaching. Obviously, after a week, he's not reading Shakespeare, but after a week, he had enough with his brain to be able to start to self-teach. So then it just becomes, the more you look at words, the more you, it just becomes this, it's just amazing. Brains are absolutely amazing. So I learned to read at 2, 3. My mum always laughs because she said, you were reading and realized that your 2-year-old little sister, she was 18 months younger than me, you realized your 2-year-old little sister could read, so you stopped reading. Sounds a lot like me. But she's a teacher. She's a brilliant teacher. No pressure. She's play-based. Her infants class was just wonderful. But she certainly wasn't sitting there with us teaching us phonics, teaching us sight words, teaching us whatever. And she didn't need to. What she did was she read to us a lot. They talked to us a lot. There were books everywhere. It's this really good, rich, language-rich environment. And she read books to me that I was obsessed with. I was obsessed with Enid Blyton for years and years and years. And I wanted to be able to do it myself. I don't have to wait till somebody's reading to me. I want to be able to do it myself. Now, I'm very fortunate in that I had ridiculously good phonemic awareness. That is the ability to hear the sounds in words that are actually represented on paper when we write. So the writing that we have on paper, and whether it's words that you're reading or you've got to spell them, but the words on paper, the letters correspond. So a letter or a string of letters, whatever, correspond with the speech sounds, because writing was created to represent speech. It wasn't the other way around. So when it was kind of invented, if you like, people would speak, and it was a way of representing speech to somebody who isn't anywhere near you, that everyone can have a look at and go and figure out these little symbols and the sounds and whatever. And that's how it all works. So now we have a bit of a tricky orthography. So it's not just here are the sounds, here's a letter that represents it. So in some countries, it's really easy to learn to read because actually you have a sound, you have a representation, a symbol, a letter that represents them. And so it's really quite easy because you look at that letter or the string of letters and you know what the sound is, and it's quite easy to do. Finland, wherever. In England, it's not quite that easy. But at the heart of it, the words are just letters that in every word, every letter has a job. So if you have the word like shell, shell, the sh is sound, phoneme, is represented by that sh. The E is represents that air. That's why we're talking about pictures of sound. So sh is the sound. What's the picture of the sound in this word? It's an S and an H. What's the picture of the sound in this word? It's an E. What's the picture of the sound in this word shell? It's two L's. But in English orthography, the sh sound might not necessarily be an SH. The might not be an E. The might not be two L's. So in that word they are, but in other words they might not be. Anyway, what am I talking about all this for? When children learn to read, they need specific things to be able to become a reader who can read anything, and you can deep read and all the rest of it. So you can get really stuck in reading and you don't even think about it. It's kind of like driving. You're just, reading, and you're not even glancing on every, it's not that you're going word by word by word by word. It's just so fluid and easy and whatever. But to be able to get to that stage, you actually do need to have an understanding of what those words, not just what they mean, but how they're structured. And it's important because if we teach a child a word to recognize by sight, which brains can memorize sort of 2,000 or so words. So high frequency words, they can recognize them by sight. But if you're just memorizing a word by sight, you're not having the opportunity to see the patterns in the words that's going to help you with other words. So it's really, really important in a word like high frequency word said, said. Oh, hold on, we had shell a minute ago. Shell. Here we've got said, said. So we've got that S sound, haven't we, in there? The S sound in this word, is represented by the AI, and then the D for the D. So every time we're saying words, we've got these sounds that it's not quite as sort of, here are the sounds it's represented. There's a bit of cognitive gymnastics that goes on, but as pretty quickly people kind of understand the rules of where those words are segmented, even though those sounds, if you technically were to sort of record a word and splice them, it wouldn't be here's the sound, it's not quite as simple as that. But our brains are very good at, with just a little bit of sort of prompting, and some brains don't need any prompting, of understanding, okay, so that's where that sound is going to be in the word, so and that's where that sound is and whatever. So or shell, that's how it's going to work. Okay, so what are the representations, what are the letters? And it's very mathematical. Every letter is used. There are only two words where that doesn't work, and they're the words one and once. I have to stop because I say one, not one, but they're the only two words where the sounds and the letters just don't mesh. But over 1 million words we can map using our tools, because it's very straightforward. The sounds map with the letters. It's very, very mathematical, and that's why my little autistic children learn to read and spell so quickly, because it's so organized and mathematical when we understand how it works. People who don't understand how it works go, oh my goodness me, there's so many rules, there's so many exceptions or whatever else. No, it's really actually very straightforward, because brains are brilliant. But anyway, skilled readers need to understand basically three things to be able to move on to become readers who read with fluency and comprehension. So readers need to know the sounds in the words that's a universal code. Don't worry if you're sort of thinking, what is she talking about? We don't all speak the same, do we? So the sounds, the letters, the way they connect isn't going to be the same for everybody, because we speak differently, whatever. But the way we have to kind of, if a child doesn't learn to read on their own with no instruction, and we're having to give them some instruction, it has to be fairly consistent. So that's where phonics comes in. So phonics just sort of says, I know, let's just pretend everybody speaks with an English accent and very proper and no, what have you. And if you actually do have that kind of an accent, phonics is actually technically going to be a lot easier for you, because you're kind of following the rules, if you like, that phonics have. A lot of children who have very strong accents, suppose you're in Ireland or Australia or whatever, you're going to have a different accent. So actually, a lot of the time, the sounds you use aren't the sounds that are expected in the instruction. So when a child needs instruction, we have to be very, very aware of the difficulties that phonics isn't as simple as sort of a lot of people make out. So, but the three things that really matter, so that children can look at words and not have to think about them and whatever, the phase of orthographic mapping, is they need to know the speech sounds in words for this universal code, this whole code, this code. They need to know the speech sounds that are expected. So let me just give you an example. So supposing I said bath or bath or whatever. So you can either say bath, or you might say bath, and people kind of expect that. And when you talk about accent, they think that's what you mean, you know, regional whatever. That's a very so so it's a different sound. There's a different sound. But actually, supposing a child in Ireland, I think might say a bat. So bat. So think about if you're going to go map those sounds with the spelling, it's like just doesn't work with phonics whatever at all. So we have to be aware of all these issues with accents, linguistics, and as well as neurodiversity. So anyway, so the speech sounds, so this is why a lot of the work I do with in the early stages addresses all this stuff, because teachers get really stuck with, how do I, you know, this child says this differently, this child, you know, in Australia I'm going and they're going and they're not using the sound and whatever. Well, can't change the way they speak. So that's why my phase 1, or the 10-day plan, if you're a reception teacher, that addresses all of that stuff, because we talk about, oh, you say that differently than me, you would use a different phoneme, speech sound monster, a little character that says the sound. So an Australian child might go, I don't say ant, I say and. So actually, which monster would I use at the beginning? And we have these discussions and keep bringing it back to the speech sound king, who created the code in the story, that we said, not speech sound frog, naughty speech sound frog that messes everything up. So the speech sound king created the codes of the whole story about the fact that he had to send messages. So so his accent was used and his speech sounds were mapped. They might be different to yours. So we come back all the time to, but what did the king say? So you say ant, but actually the speech sound king, when he was creating those pictures of the sounds, he did an A for ant, even if you don't. So we sort of make it meaningful and the children understand and whatever. But anyway, so the speech sounds, for a child to be able to look at a word and recognize it straight away and to be able to spell it correctly, they need to know the speech sounds that are used for that universal code. They need to know the letters that are going to map with those speech sounds, and they need to know the meaning of the words. Those three things, that's it. Those three things need to be glued together. So when a child comes to me and they're an instructional casualty, I have to think, what broke down? What aren't they getting? Can they hear the sounds? Have they got good phonemic awareness? And good phonological working memory, so that if we have a long word, can they hear those sounds and blend those sounds, even if it's lots and lots of them, what have you. I have to think, if they've got good phonemic awareness. I met a lady this week walking the dogs, and she's only read one book in her life. She's dyslexic, and she had finally read her first book ever in her life, and she'd read her first book during COVID, because it was kind of like, I have no distractions, it's all quiet, I'm going to read a book. And because I was walking and talking, I thought, I bet you're saying you're dyslexic and you're having difficulty with reading and spelling. I bet you've got poor phonemic awareness. So as we were walking along, I just did a few little things with her to see if she got poor phonemic awareness, as you do. And she actually hasn't. She actually had some pretty decent phonemic awareness. So then what I do is I think, okay, so that she's hearing the sounds, especially when I do it, because I'm giving the right sounds. And this is why it's a lot of difficulties with instructional casualties, when the teachers don't give the right sounds, and the child's got to try and translate what they've said into the word and all the rest of it. So then what I realized was that this lady has, like a lot of dyslexic learners, a lot of children who have become instructional casualties. And I said to her, you do know you're an instructional casualty. If I had taught you when you were little, if I had taught you, you would have been reading and spelling early, because I would have identified, is it the speech sounds, the spelling, or the meaning? What is the issue? And I would have dealt with that ages ago, when you were also still brain plasticity sort of, and when you're more interested, more engaged, less going on, all the rest of it. The older you get, the more there's going on, the more likely are you not going to want to change things and all the rest of it. But what I realized was that when she's looking at a word, she's memorizing that word. And actually, when she's reading this book, what she's doing is she's saying, but when I come to a word I don't know, I'll guess at it because of what I've already been reading. And I'm like, oh my God, that's brilliant. So she's using the context to work out what that word could be. But then I said, but then what you need to be doing is you need to think, if you can hear the sounds and you know that word is, I don't know, staircase, whatever, and you've got the sound, you can hear those sounds or whatever, you need to think, okay, and she was duck-handing as she was walking along, staircase, or sound was there, split by diagraph. But if you can hear the sounds, what I want you to do is think, okay, so which letters would be assigned to those sounds? So if you figured out what that word is, and also I showed her my code mapping tool, so she can type that word in and see which letters go together, and then think, okay, so now I can see which letters go together. What are the sounds? And of course, if she then was to use my other tech, which shows the phonemes with the sounds, she'd be able to then go look at the word and see the letters that go together, the sounds, just to check she did get the right sounds. And so what I'm doing is I'm showing her the sounds, the spelling. She already knew the meaning because she knows it from context. So the more she does that, it's not about the word, it's about the brain understanding, oh, that's how those letters go together, that's the sound. And then what happens with the brain, which is really quite remarkable, is the brain goes, oh, I like this word. And then it starts to look at other words and starts to become obsessed with looking at words and seeing them as pictures of sound, seeing which letters go together and gluing it together. And then it becomes just this ongoing, and then the brain starts to really, you glue together basically with those three things in the orthographic lexicon, the brain word bank, and then that word is stored. Now, the better the phonemic awareness, the easier it is to store. Actually, when I'm working with children with good phonemic awareness and we do our routines, we're gluing together those three things. They only have to do it a couple of times, and the next time they see the word with no clues, no mapping, no phonemes, no nothing, they will recognize that word straight away, and they will also spell it correctly in their book. And if they spell it correctly in their book, and if they spell it incorrectly, they will self-correct. So it's this, we're showing the brain how it works, those three things. Now, obviously, reading means about being able to do that quickly and get all those words together and understand what it is you're reading. But it's like the foundation of a house. If you keep looking at the windows and trying to make them pretty and all the rest of it, and you're neglecting that foundation, it just all falls down. If you get that foundation right, which is just the word mapping, it's just, do I know in this individual word the speech sounds that are used in this universal code, even if I change it for my accent, the spelling, so the letters that go together, and the meaning. If you glue that together, it means that every time you see new words, it's faster, you're recognizing it quicker, you're storing more words, and then you can see more words and you've got less cognitive resources being used up, so you can go through a whole sentence with hardly even looking at the word, and then you're remembering all of the words, and then you think, oh, what does that mean? If you're going single word, all of your cognitive, all your effort is on those words. By the time you get to the end of the sentence, often you can't even remember what those words were, let alone critically analysing it or whatever. So, yes, Kimmy? So these three things, that's what you have to keep coming back to. If a child isn't reading, is having reading difficulties, then one of those three parts has fallen apart, because if you haven't got those three parts, you can't do it quickly enough to be able to think about what you're reading and do it with fluency and deep read and all the rest of it. So the really important thing that the reason that I was often a tizzy or whatever else marching away is because just about every parent I speak to thinks there's something wrong with their child. Just about every teacher I seem to speak to thinks there's something wrong with the child, and they think that they just need more of the same instruction. All of us as teachers, it's bizarre. All of us as teachers have looked back and thought, oh my goodness me, I could have done that better. Whatever. So we are capable of thinking, I was doing the best I could then, because that's all I knew. And the more we know, the easier it is. But we have to also always hold on to the fact that in the future, I might be looking back and going, oh my goodness me, I only knew that. Now I know more. But what I really want teachers to think is, I've been doing this a long time, so I've had a lot of time to make mistakes and to learn whatever. I've also supported thousands of teachers in Australia and schools and, whole school literacy. And, I've done all sorts. So this isn't sort of, I've taken a few children and got a few children to read, or it's just my child, or, whatever. I have supported thousands and thousands of children of all different ages and stages and backgrounds and languages and whatever else. So I've kind of learned as I go through working with children, and I can honestly say now, at the tender age that there is not one child. If you give me a 2-year-old, I will ensure that they are never going to struggle with reading and spelling, ever. Any 2-year-old. There's a very, very small number of children who've got real significant intellectual, challenges, who very less than 5%, I'd say, of children are not going to be able to read and spell. Reading and spelling actually is relatively easy for brains, if you give them the right learning environment. And if I get a 2-year-old, I can see which of the children who are at risk of becoming instructional casualties. And so it's really important to me that I send them to school reading. That is not because of academic stuff. It's because I need to protect them. I need to protect them from the school system and becoming an instructional casualty. I've been involved in supporting Alf, who you might have seen on some videos, who's autistic, just turned 9. He is now doing really well, but he is definitely an instructional casualty. If a child has had over 2 years of synthetic phonics and can't read a basic sentence, a cat on a mat, whatever, why would the first thing that why would the teachers keep thinking it's the child's fault? I don't understand that, because I suppose because I've never met a child I can't teach to read. So the idea for me that someone would keep going over and over again with this synthetic phonics stuff, and the child, Alf, hated it, was absolutely hated it, felt so awful about himself, hated looking at anything like that. So now he's doing my stuff and whatever, but that's been such a struggle. If I'd met him when he was 2-3 years old, I would have ensured that he had the phonemic awareness, because sort of he hadn't got the phonemic awareness. I'd have made sure he had the phonemic awareness, introduce the phonemes, which the children love because they're all moving characters. They say a sound, put the sounds together, follow the monster sounds, say the word, or shell, follow the monster sounds, say the word, whatever. It all makes sense to the children, and we're going left to right. And, what are the pictures of the sounds in this? So the children can blend together any words they're interested in. They're interested in Thomas the Tank Engine. They can see Thomas with the phonemes, the to tank, engine, probably schwa, engine. So they can see that they're the words and the sounds, and then I can say, in this word, here are the pictures of the sounds, but it doesn't matter about the graphemes at that point, because that's not it. We're schema driven. So where they're interested in the words, they're interested in the phonemes, the sounds, we show them the words, the graphemes at the same time when their brain is ready to look at it, because the phonemes and the blending the words and whatever and just the sounds becomes just so easy. Then the brain goes, oh, that's too easy now. So now let's have a bit more of a challenge. That's what brains do. Oh, now let's have a look at these letters. So when they're ready, that's when they start to understand those graphemes. But if I'd been working with Alf, I'd have found out what he was interested in. We would have been building words in the phonemes using the words that he's interested in. He would have become interested in it. And the children that I work with become readers before they start school, not as the goal. Although if I think they're going to be an instructional casualty, that actually is my goal, because it's about protecting them. But vast majority of children, 3 out of 4 children, I just want them to get obsessed with mapping and words and meaning of the words and gluing together the speech, the spelling, whatever, at their pace. But because they get obsessed with it, little speech sound detectives, you know, and it's speech sound play, most of them, you can't stop them from learning to read because they start to self-teach. So I'm not teaching them to read, I'm teaching them what it's all about, how it all works together like a puzzle with the speech and the spelling, whatever, the speech and the letters. So the speech sounds, the pictures of the sounds. So we've got speech sounds, speech sound pics. So by putting it all together, they start to self-teach. So, and that's why really the tech is so brilliant, because now if they come to a word, you know, that they see out in the environment and they go, what's that word? Well, the parents can tell them the word, and then they can duck hand it and think of the monsters and whatever, or they can get their parents to type it in if they're not typing yet. The 2-year-olds, obviously, they're not typing it in. Put in the word, map it, and they can see where the letters go together, what the phonemes are. If they are using my speaky, they think, oh, I want to be able to, you know, I'm interested in Thomas. Then they'll go to us on the keyboard with the phonemes. The word will appear, and they can hear it. Thomas, Thomas, Thomas.
My Chinese name is Thomas.
Oh. Mm. Uh. Oh. Mm. Thomas. Thomas.
So because of the tech, they can do it both way around. They can do it from, here are the words, what are the sounds. So here's the word, check now. So we're going to check the mapping. There are the graphemes, the pictures of the sounds, and there are the phonemes telling us the sound. Thomas. Or here are the sounds, what does the word look like? So we're constantly bringing together the pictures of the sounds, the graphemes, and the sounds, whatever, but it's in a way that's just, it's not a scope and sequence. It's not, we're teaching this grapheme first and we're doing this and whatever else, like they're doing synthetic phonics, which you have to do to a certain extent in a classroom setting because you've got 25 odd children, but not in, it doesn't have to be how synthetic phonics does it. You can teach phonics to a whole class and have that high frequency grapheme scope and sequence or whatever, but it just, you don't have to have every child doing it in the same way at the same time, and that's what the speech sound pics approach is all about. But these little children they start to self-teach. Now, I talk about instructional casualties, and when parents come to me and I say, you do know they are an instructional casualty, and they look at me like, what? It is the teaching, it is the instruction. If they were learning with me, they would be reading, they would be feeling good about themselves, and they would be enjoying what they're doing. They are an instructional casualty. Older children who have been failed, they are instructional casualties. The instruction did not meet their needs. And unfortunately, because a program was used, assuming that every child learns in the same way and whatever, and when children are learning to read, there are the things that need to happen that need to be in place. The actual instruction depends on the child. Some children need lots of phonemic awareness help so that they can hear those sounds and then it clicks. Some children don't need any explicit instruction in phonemic awareness at all. Some children, it's the fact that they aren't quite connecting both ways, the looking at the words and whatever, and the other way around, the spelling else. They're not connecting the speech and the spelling. Some might be the meaning because they haven't got the language skills and whatever else, which is why we want them reading early, because the earlier you read, the more language you get, because you're going to have new words, whatever. You're not going to hear necessarily in conversation. But children have to have these three things glued together so that they can do it quickly and understand what they're reading, whatever. And it's not a do this and then they, you know, we're doing it all at the same time. But sorry, I'm giving you a bit too much technical stuff at the moment, but every child needs the same stuff to be a skilled reader that's also a good speller, because you need to know it both ways round. And the reading is a lot easier because, for example, supposing a child used basic phonics, and supposing they are trying to figure out what a word is, and it's Harper. So they'll go R, Harper, Harper. It's a name. So what they're doing there, it's called set for variability. So what they're doing there is they're using the bits they know from their phonics, core phonics, the basic phonics, and then they're going, oh, this is the actual word. Now, what we need them to do, and this is, so in the instruction, they might not be getting this. We need today to say to them, okay, but they aren't the right sounds, are they? So you figured out the word. That's brilliant. You know what the word is. You know what the letters are. You actually know the letters go Harper. You know what it means. It's somebody's name, but we haven't got the spelling. We haven't got the speech sounds right. What are the speech sounds? Now you know it's Harper. What are the speech sounds? Up, Oh, so that last one is the schwa. It's the grunty sound. So it's the last one is the So the er there is a representation of the of the schwa. And that would help them when they go to look at something like water. They might look at it and go, what ought, what, they might go, what at, water, oh, water, especially if there's context, whatever. Then there's two they've got to look at. But in that word, they might go, oh, yes, because I saw that before. Water. So next time, and then the new one here is the A for the or sound. But next time they'll go, ought, water. And then when they see another word like better, let's say, they'll go, instead of going through better. So it's less cognitive steps, if you less steps. Where is it going to? So yeah, so if teachers understand that those are the three things that the child needs, they need to be able to hear the sounds, understand which letters map with those sounds and the meaning. Then when they look at a child, they're going to do things differently, because the children are going to need different instruction depending on what they've already got. If your child is at risk of dyslexia, they've got really poor phonemic awareness, so they're going to need a lot more of that in phonological working memory and whatever. So that's why we have to screen children really early to go, these are the children that they can't start phonics, especially at the moment when we've taken away that phase one that had some phonemic awareness first of all before we started the the graphemes, whatever. But now, because the Department of Education has said, no, start the phonics straight away, give them the letters, they've got that cognitive load of, let's look at a letter, let's remember the sound it's supposed to represent. I actually don't know how they blend together, because I can't hear those sounds, and I don't know how to blend them together, whatever. So they might be really good at memorizing. You show them a flashcard with an A and they go, and everybody's doing actions and whatever else, but they can't read and spell because they haven't got the phonemic awareness. And the phonics program doesn't take into account, because the phonics developers and the Department of Education presumes that by doing this phonemic awareness is going to develop. Poor phonemic awareness is the number one thing that I get when I have older children that come to me that are instructional casualties. And I'll say, give me the sounds in picture. And they go, put ick. And if they've got a representation of, they think they've memorized the word particularly, they'll go things like put ick, because they've memorized certain stuff, but then they're trying to, it's just it's so much hard work for their brains. It's just an absolute nightmare. But if I ask children to give me the sounds in words, so I usually start off with, I'll say to them, here's the word frog, good, because I need to say to them, I'm splitting up good, because some strange reason some phonics programs, even a validated phonics programs, does these and whatever, which is madness. We have to simplify it down to and teach them to blend. So if I say to the children, so here's okay, could you just, if you took away that sound, what would the word be? And see if they can go fog. So we're doing things like taking sounds away, adding the sounds and whatever, just to see, I'll say to them, can you give me the word, sticks in sounds? And they'll often go st. They might go the st, and they're not sure what that last sound is, and it's all sort of jumbled up together and whatever else. So I think nobody has shown them this. I know it's not a natural thing because but it is a system that they have to understand. Sticks, no syllables, no consonant blends, so nothing, just the phonemes. What are they? Nobody has got them to do that, and that's why we do the duck hands, the lines, the numbers, no letters, whatever, and then we put the phonemes on the lines to say, okay, so you've identified those are the sounds. Sticks. We've got the lines, and here is the monster 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 and monster sticks and monsters at the end. So we've got two monsters there in that same word, so they can see it, and then we can think about, because until they can understand that part, assigning those letters is just, it just doesn't make much sense. So anyway, so the number one thing that I find when I'm assessing children who are instructional casualties, nobody's actually made sure that they're really clear on those sounds. So especially when they come to spell a word and someone goes, sound it out. Well, I can't hear the sounds. How can I do that? What the teacher usually means is sound it out, have a look at a word and think. Anyway, so these weird phrases that don't really make sense when you pick them apart. But anyway, instructional casualties. I'm sorry, folks, but we're going to have to really look really carefully at the children who are failing and stop saying it's because of the child, because they have a learning disability or a special educational needs. They don't have special educational needs. They have their needs, and nobody's identified what their needs are. And I'm telling you, for reading and spelling, it's actually relatively easy, because to be able to have those ingredients to be able to read and spell, spelling, speech, sound, spelling, and meaning, they're your three things. Now, obviously, in with that as well, you need to be interested and all the rest of it. But I spend my life on word mapping, and people go, oh, is that phonics? Actually, no, it's phonics. It is phonics, because phonics is just mapping letters and sounds together. But when people talk about phonics, they don't normally talk about a phonics program, which is a very narrow, rigid way of teaching a very small number of correspondences, about 100, whereas the whole code is over 350 or whatever. So if you have a spelling cloud wall up, you'll see all of the spelling choices and you'll realize, holy moly, we're hardly teaching any of this explicitly. How on earth are they going to learn the rest? Exactly. And that's where what I do comes in. We're setting their learning environment so the children start to self-teach really early on, at a time when they're young enough and interested, because the older the children get, if they get to Key Stage 2 and they're not reading independently, enjoying it, it's going to be a lot harder. You've got lots of things to compete with. The children are often thinking it is their fault. They switch off. They don't want to go to school. It just becomes this whole snowball of whatever. And unfortunately, the teachers in Key Stage 2 or the Department of Education are not saying it's because they're instructional casualties, so they get the same instruction. So the big thing I want to take away, that I was marching away on Monday with my 12,000 odd steps, whatever, is instructional casualties. They're instructional casualties. It's not the child's fault. If I can teach every child, anybody can teach every child. So what we need to do is we need to identify children early and prevent children from becoming instructional casualties. And for a lot of children, that might mean we have to get them before they start school, because that's where they're going to get failed. We have to change the education system so that the teachers are able in Key Stage 1 to not set up this dyslexia paradox, which means that the time when the children need the best instruction for their needs, whatever, they're not getting it, and then they're getting the stuff that they should have got before. In fact, they're often not getting what they should have got before. Afterwards, we need to make sure that every child can read in Key Stage 1 way early, really, ideally, because English orthography is so complex. And also, the more you read, the more you understand different words, and you become critical thinkers, you develop empathy. There's all sorts of stuff about reading. So the problem is, people think early reading, they think of phonics programs and work and things that the child isn't going to enjoy. When I think about early reading, I think about these really excited children who just love to read. They love books, they love to talk. They, even if they're non-speaking, that's why I created the tech that I create for non-speaking children. Just because you're not speaking doesn't mean you can't read and spell as early as children who are speaking. So you just need the communication tools so that you can actually have that conversation with people that is a lot more in depth than just using your AAC devices that people have at the moment, which is just a picture and it's just a nightmare, cognitive overload. But anyway, please don't anyone write to me and complain about whatever else. I'm sorry. I've had enough of apologizing for hurting adults' feelings for the things that they use or whatever else. So that's what it comes down to. So I will stop talking now to say instructional casualties. We need to prevent it, immunise children against illiteracy. We need to understand that at least 95% of children who are struggling with reading and spelling are instructional casualties. If you gave them to me, they would stop being an instructional casualty because I would teach them in the way they learn, and so they would no longer have learning difficulties. It's a learning difficulty because of the instruction. The instruction is not helping them to learn easily. So that's what I do. I help every child to have to understand how they learn so that I can give them what they need to learn to read and spell easily. So, yeah, instructional casualties. Let's say it as it is. These are children who have been failed, and until we accept that is what's happening, we cannot change it. Instructional casualties. So anyway, so I'm off now with these dogs to have another walk. I don't think I'll do 12,000. It's been quite therapeutic for me talking to you today. Please do join the Sound Learning Lab. Well, I say join, you can just go there, whether it ends up being a membership area, members area, whatever, I don't know. But what I'm going to do is basically share things about instructional casualties, preventing them, assessing them, and making sure they stop being an instructional casualty. But let's hope they do. Most teachers desperately want to learn more or whatever. It might be a bit of an ego boost first, an ego dent first of all, to think, oh, gosh, was that me? It's not. It's because you've been told to use these awful programs. On so many levels, they're awful programs. So help me to get rid of these awful programs, give you more knowledge. We want you to have more autonomy, because at the end of the day, you need to be able to meet individual needs. But the way we do it is different, and we use a lot of text. So you're freed up to look around and we'll see what's going on, and you're not having to do as much teaching of constrained skills because the tech does. So the children can just learn those high frequency graphemes, blending them, phonemic awareness, everything else, whilst you are observing what's going on. And you can do what tech can't do, which is go and sit, give a child a hug, give them an attaboy, that's brilliant, wow, look at you, aren't you fantastic? You can't do that at the front when you're talking and you're not observing and seeing that actually two children have absolutely no idea what you're talking about, and they're, away with the fairies because it's just so, just so not interesting, or just not, it's either too easy or too hard or whatever else. You can't say the same thing to 25 children, and you're only going to have a few children that it goes, oh, this is exciting because this is just above my knowledge level and all the rest of it. So anyway, I can show you how to get all your children through all of the synthetic phonics curriculum content in your reception year, not over 2 years or 3 years or whatever, in your reception year with, but I can also, what I need to do is you to have that knowledge of what does each individual child need. So when you have a child that isn't, that you think, do you know what, they're not quite reading with fluency, or they're stumbling on every word or whatever else, that you need to know why, you need to know what to check. So that's what the Sound Learning Lab will be all about. So teachers can have a look at it, but it's mainly, to be honest, for parents, because I want parents to have somewhere they can come and go, do you know what, it isn't my child. And that's what Alf's parents did. They kept thinking, do you know what, I don't think it's that Alf is not capable of learning to read. We think he's more than capable of so much stuff. So what's happening? And that's how they got in touch with me, and straight away went round, have a quick assessment. That hasn't got the phonemic awareness to be able to learn phonics at all. But we started to do it in different ways. And now Alf is just a different kid. He's sitting taller when he's doing it. He's interested. He's asking questions about Billy Blue Hat and Jennifer Yellow Hat and all the rest of it. He's reading these little books. He's just, his engagement, his interest, the conversation. So the comprehension and all that stuff that people go, how do we teach comprehension? Well, actually what you do is you get them to be able to map words, and the comprehension will happen because they get interested in the books. So again, what kind of books are you giving the children? It's a lot easier to do it early because we can do the story peeps, the speaky peeps. We can have little peg dolls that we talk, and it links in with the 1, 2, 3 and away books and the stories and all the rest of it. When the children are older, they're not going to be necessarily want to. Alf happens to be really interested in the story people and Village with 3 Corners, whatever. But a lot of children, when they get to 9, 10, 11, aren't. So I will show you how we can get them there in the way that is going to work for them. And I can hear my dogs going mad outside because they need to walk, and they're saying, shut up. Mummy, shut up, Miss Emma. And so I shall go now. So hopefully I won't be doing that many steps again next week.